you have contrasted what these biblical prophets did and said to some of the other so-called prophets throughout history, Nostradamus, more recently, people like Gene Dixon. Talk about that a little bit, because it's pretty interesting contrast.
Well, that was one of the objections I had when I was a skeptic, because I would say, well, you know, look at Gene Dixon. She predicted all these things, and they came true. So what does that say? I mean, maybe God's behind that. Or what about Nostradamus and all the things he predicted? He lived in the 15th century. Didn't he predict that Germany would come to power under Adolf Hitler and start World War II? Wasn't that predicted in advance? So I investigated that, and it was fascinating to look at that, because what I found out, for instance, about Gene Dixon, and she, of course, probably the most famous psychic anyway of my day, she predicted in 1956 that John Kennedy would win the 1960 election. And that was a big prediction at the time, and that he would die in office. Well, you read that and you think, wow, that's pretty impressive, until you find out she hedged her bets. She later predicted that Richard Nixon would win the election. So she had a 100% chance of winning either way. She had both of them out there.
That's pretty safe.
Yeah. Secondly, she said that labor would make a huge difference in the election, which it didn't. And she also said that the winner of the election would die in office. Well, when you look in the previous 100 years, the number of presidents who were either very sick when they left office or had died in office, that wasn't much of a stretch. But then a statistical analysis was done of Gene Dixon and other psychics in 1975, and it showed that during the predictions made during that calendar year of 1975, they were right 6% of the time. I mean, I think I could guess better than 6% of the time.
Just roll the dice.
Roll the dice. Yeah. You know, whereas the messianic prophecies always come to be fulfilled. You look at Gene Dixon, and I found predictions that she said that World War III would start in 1954. She predicted that Castro would be thrown out of Cuba in 1970. And my favorite one is she predicted that Jacqueline Kennedy would not remarry, and then the next day she announced her engagement to Aristotle Onassis. so a lot of this stuff. And then you look at Nostradamus. A lot of people say, well, didn't he predict all this stuff? Well, his stuff is very enigmatic. It's vague. People read things into it.
I mean, it sounds impressive. He predicted Hitler.
Hitler rising to power.
400 years ahead of time.
Exactly. Let me read you exactly what he wrote, and you'll see how enigmatic this is and how people read things into it. This is the prediction of World War II and Adolf Hitler. A follower of a sect, great troubles are in store for the messenger. A beast upon the theater prepares the scenical play. The inventor of that wicked feat will be famous. The world will be confused and divided. Beasts, mad with hunger, will swim across rivers. Most of the army will be against the lower Danube. Now, the lower Danube, that's Hister. That he was right. The word that he used, Hister, not Hitler. The word Hister means lower Danube. It's a location, not a person.
But they try to say Hister.
It must mean Hitler. But he's referring to the lower Danube. And then he says, the great one shall be dragged in an iron cage, when the child brother will observe nothing. Well, child brother, the Latin for that is de germane, not Germany. He was using the Latin phrase de germane to mean child brother. So it has nothing to do with Germany. It has nothing to do with Adolf Hitler, but people will grab any little snippet that they can and make the claim that he made these incredible predictions.
Contrasted to the kinds of specific prophecies we just heard about in the video.
Exactly, where you see them being fulfilled over and over again. They're specific, they're not vague and enigmatic. They're very precise in terms of what they predict. You look in Daniel, and it predicts the exact time frame in history when the Messiah would appear. Well, you know, that's not vague. That's not...